Good morning. It's Friday, September 30th. I'm Jessica Lovell. Thank you so much for being with us today here on the Morning Medical Update. Well, she battled and then beat lymphoma for the third time. How one woman's son stepped in and helped save her life.
And speaking of saving a life, Be the Match is looking for something very specific, and that's diversity. Coming up, we're going to tell you and show you how easy it is to find out if you could save a life.
And it's Foodie Friday. Chef Eric makes a healthy, sweet treat for the game, and I love popping them in my kids' lunch. That's all coming up. Thanks for joining us today here on Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitter. We are live inside the Dolph C. Simons Jr. Family Broadcast Studio. Thousands of people need a life-saving stem cell transplant, but if you are a minority, finding a match can be tough. We want to show you this chart here on your screen from the Asian American Donor Program showing the probability of finding one based on race. American Indians have a 57% chance, Hispanics 46%, and African Americans are at just 23%. But an event here in Kansas City hopes to better those odds for folks. And joining us in studio this morning are Dr. Joseph McGurk. He is Division Director of Hematologic Malignancies and Cellular Therapeutics with the University of Kansas Cancer Center. And also so glad to be joined by Cece Rojas. She is a BMT patient, a cancer survivor, and a very good friend of the health system. She is also the president of Tico Productions. How are you?
I'm great.
Great to see you. Always great to have you sitting here with me. So
thank you for having me.
All right. Well, we're going to dive in. Alexis Del Cid is also live with us from the Guadalupe Centers with Mindy Allen. She's a nurse and blood marrow donor coordinator. They're going to show us just how easy it is to join the national registry that could eventually lead to a match. And you might have some questions today along the way, so get those sent in through the links here on your screen, or you can place them in the thread below. Well, every year, more than 12,000 people nationwide are in need of a bone marrow transplant, also known as a stem cell treatment. Bone marrow transplants are infusing healthy blood stem cells into your body to replace damaged or diseased bone marrow. And depending on your race, it can be tough to find that donor. This chart kind of lays it out for you. It shows by ethnicity how many people are in the Be the Match registry program. The numbers in both ethnicities pale in comparison to that of Caucasians, with more than 9.5 million registered donors. So that's what we're talking about today. Did I describe it right?
You did an excellent job. Very well done.
With you here, I always have to make sure I get your big long title right, and I have to make sure I describe this treatment correctly so people understand it. But we're going to get into it a little bit more today. Cece, you had quite a journey to get to where you are right here with us today. Tell us about when you were first diagnosed.
Yeah, so I was, working really hard. Our business was just starting to take off, and I was just, not feeling well. And I just chalked it up to, maybe just overextending myself, a lot of travel, what have you. And I got a really odd poison ivy infection that just would not heal. And then I felt a lump in my abdomen, and then I knew at that point something was really wrong. So I was diagnosed in 2017 with lymphoma.
And that was the first time.
It was the first time.
And then second time is when I met you for the first time. Tell us about that.
Right. So I relapsed after about 6-7 months, and then I was, it came back with the small lump, and on the back of my thigh, and then at that point it's really scary because it's probably back. And so I was told that I was a good candidate for CAR T, at that point it was a very new treatment, clinical trial.
And Dr. McGurk, I bet we hear that a lot. It's tough with people like Cece who are so busy, they're running and gunning and out there working so hard. It's easy for them to maybe miss things, right? Or,
yes,
or something, they don't feel good, but she was a good patient in the fact she knew something was wrong, so she came for help.
That's right, absolutely. Early detection, very important before the cancer disseminates further, becomes more aggressive, and starts making the patient more ill.
Don't ignore the signs. When you learned, Cece, that you needed a donor, you were lucky in the fact that you didn't need to search far. Tell us about that.
No, that's correct. So, the team obviously at the cancer center, they were giving me obviously my options, and one was to try to find a match. And it just so happened that my son was a match for me. He was I actually had my two sons were both matches, but I had my son here was local, and then I had another son that lives in Dallas, Texas. So I was very fortunate in the fact that he was a match for me.
Is that pretty common, Dr. McGurk, to find a match within your own family?
It depends on how we define a match.
Okay.
So the best potential donor is a donor who has identical chromosome 6s. We each get one from mom, one from dad, so we have two, all of us. And you always have to be half matched with your parents, otherwise there's something that's not being talked about. Okay,
Right.
So you have to be half.
We have a problem.
Exactly. So you have to be half matched. The most optimal circumstance is that both chromosomes are perfectly matched. Unfortunately, for many patients, that's not possible. And so the best potential match is someone who's half matched, has at least one of those chromosome 6s in common with a parent or with a sibling, for example. And that was the case in Cece's situation. Her sons were half matched, which was predictable, but a fully matched chromosome 6. That allows us to take those patients to transplant. But again, historically, the best match is a perfect match, and we get those from what's called a matched sibling donor or the match unrelated donor registry. These types of transplants that Cece went through were experimental until just a few years ago, and now are a mainstay and have outcomes that are very similar to a perfect match unrelated donor transplant.
So you're saying it doesn't always have to come from the family. We could find perfect matches on the registry, somewhat close, as close as you're going to get on the registry.
Right.
That's why this is so important to talk about. So when you talk about those markers, are you talking about the HLA markers?
We are.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, Cece, I know you're, well, here, let's show this chart here really quick that kind of explains what HLA markers are and why it's so important to match. It just kind of, is this what you're talking about with the 6?
That's exactly right. There are molecules on the surface of cells that allow us to recognize self versus non-self. Non-self could be a bacteria or a fungus or a virus. We want to attack and kill that. You don't want to attack and kill your own cells. And so all cells in our body have molecules that identify themselves as self or non-self. And if you do a mismatched transplant in a patient, some of those molecules the immune system doesn't recognize, thinks it's a bad actor, like a bacteria or fungus, and will attack it and either reject the stem cell graft, or the stem cell graft will recognize the patient as foreign and attack them and cause a problem called graft versus host disease, which is the opposite of rejection. It's a common problem. It can make patients very ill, and sometimes we lose patients from complications of these problems, graft rejection or graft versus host disease.
Cece, you were shaking your head. You've certainly learned a lot about this along your health journey. Tell us a little bit about any of these issues that you were having.
I really don't think I had very acute symptoms of graft versus host disease, but it was, it's a long process to fully heal, or even get close to where you feel like you're, in a positive, we have positive momentum. It was definitely, the weight loss and the not being able to eat, to struggle. For me, it was like a light switch turned on the minute I got my appetite returned, because then I felt like I was, I was able to, not just gain weight, but just feel better, and my strength was coming back, and so that for me was one of the biggest challenges. And
how do you feel sitting here today, like you did
great.
before 2017?
Oh, I feel way better than I did before 2017,
Nice.
because I think that my body's been just reset.
Yeah.
And so that in itself, I feel much better. And I know, too, what's happening with my body now right away.
So you're a leader in the Hispanic community, as we know, on a business side in so many ways, but you especially are when it comes to advocating for Be the Match registration. Talk about that.
Right. So we have a responsibility. I feel like we have people that are survivors. We have responsibilities to go out and tell people, talk about it, enroll people into how they can see themselves as part of the solution. And this is a small way that has huge results. Big payout at the end. So yeah, my company too. We talk about it. We have our broadcast for the NFL and collegiate teams, and we are talking about it all the time, and how people can, a small swab in what they would do, for the process to become a donor. We talk about that on a regular basis.
I bet anyone who comes in contact with you or you're always using it as an opportunity to tell people about how important getting on that Be the Match registry is. And it's so easy, and we're going to show how easy it is here in just a moment. Dr. McGurk, if people are wondering, though, why it's so important to be a donor, there was a recent article in the journal Science Direct that found that those who undergo bone marrow transplants have a 62% survival rate after their first year. And the odds of survival go up even higher as the years go on.
Yes.
Could be up as far as 98% of people who continue to live and live long, full, healthy lives. Can you just help us break down the survival rates when it comes to this treatment?
Absolutely. It's very much dependent on the type of blood cancer that we're treating. So there's some variance there. But in general, that's about right. For some patients, the chance of surviving at 1 year is 85%. For others, it's 50%. And also dependent on the status of their disease, are they in complete remission or not? And so once they've survived for 1 year, then the chances of their surviving beyond that point dramatically improve. You made it out to a year, most things that could have happened would have happened by now, and most patients who are going to relapse would have relapsed by that time point. So once you get beyond that 1 year mark, things look really good. Long-term survival can approximate that for the majority of patients as if they had never had a cancer.
Who makes, though, for great patients? Not all treatment is for everyone.
That's right.
So what are those conversations like when somebody sees CC doing so well and somebody comes to you and they have the same type of cancer? Is it always, you're not going to always go down the same path?
No, that's right, exactly. There are other therapies that might be curative. CC, for example, had CAR T-cell therapy, but her disease came back after the CAR T-cell therapy. Some patients have had extensive prior chemotherapy. The disease comes back. And then stem cell transplant becomes the only potentially curative treatment option for those patients. Now, some patients, we can predict that their disease is going to do very badly when they're first diagnosed. And so as soon as we get them into remission with chemotherapy, we take them directly to a transplant. So identifying donors for patients who either have very high-risk disease and are going to need it the minute they get into remission, or for those patients who have high risk for relapse but won't go to transplant unless they do relapse, it's important to be planful, look ahead of time. So for many patients, we search the worldwide registry, even if we're not going to immediately do a transplant, because we know, based on their disease status, that they have a very good, greater than 50% chance this disease is going to come back, and we want to be prepared.
Well, you said worldwide registry, and I don't think people think of that when we think of transplants and looking for donors. We just think so much into our immediate circle, but to think that we're looking all over the globe for somebody who could be the best match for somebody, pretty amazing
40
stuff.
40 million people, 40 million donors in the worldwide registry, and stem cell grafts come to University of Kansas from all over the world.
And we need more, 40 million, but we need more.
We do need more.
We need more. Cece, we're going to talk again here in just a moment about just the importance of minorities coming forward and doing that. We're going to show that. But this is something interesting. And Dr. McGurk, tell me what you've heard about this, but some articles and research has said when you get a stem cell transplant that maybe your personality changes. Is that true, not true, or that you're emotional or anything that you're getting from someone else, or that things change, or is that just going through treatment?
I think going through treatment, and Cece can speak to this better than I can. This is life-changing, and it makes people reassess their values and what they consider important and not so important. It changes family dynamics, oftentimes in a very positive way, not that anyone should or have to go through such an event, but I think that it's extremely impactful. But what does change, and is really quite interesting, is if you put a blindfold on and drew blood from Cece, you would think Cece was a guy, because her blood, her blood type is that of her son. If she, God forbid, should ever commit a terrible crime, she can pin it on her son.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
Good to know.
Good to know. Fun fact. We'll make a note of that. Well, that's interesting. So, no, you're not becoming a new person, but that is hard to tell, because you're right. Anybody going through something like this, their emotions and their personality is going to change in so many different ways. I mean, it's such a life-changing event. Cece, you've been back to traveling. I wanted to ask you really quick before we get to our numbers today. You were at the White House.
I was.
Why?
Yes,
Tell us.
So I'm chairwoman of YMCA of the USA, very proud to represent the YMCA. And I was asked to serve on the White House conference for nutrition, hunger, and health.
What'd you learn? What'd you take away?
Well, obviously that a lot of this work, it was relevant there about access to, just affordable access to health care, preventative health.
Yes.
And how can we create and be better advocates for legislation that would create better outcomes as it relates to access to preventative health. So it was a lot of disparities work, especially in the underrepresented communities. So it was just very relevant, especially for me, having been through what I've been through.
Oh, great. Thank you for doing the advocating in Washington for us.
Yes.
Let's turn to Dr. Dana Hawkinson this morning, Medical Director of Infection Prevention and Control, joining us with our numbers. Numbers have increased a bit here. Talk to us about that and what would that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult to say. We really prefer that 7, 10, 14-day trend. We know that for the past couple days, it was a little bit lower than those low 30s that we have seen for active infections. Up to 29, too. I don't know that variability is too significant. I think it's going to be important to see what happens through the weekend and next week. But right now, 29 active infections, 5 in the ICU, 3 on the ventilator, and still 24 in that recovery period as well. So again, I don't know. We were really hoping to get down to 10 in single digits. It just isn't happening yet. Unfortunately, we know viral circulation, although decreasing, is still fairly prominent out there in the community.
So a new study from Indiana University found that pregnant women who were initially left out of those initial trials, that we know that once they got their double shot in the beginning, their mRNA vaccine dose, and then got their booster, they were protected well against hospitalization from COVID. These results don't surprise you?
No, because we know that for the past year and a half, we've seen other data, and this supports the bulk of the data, really all of the data that shows that those mothers that were vaccinated before pregnancy or during pregnancy had a better outcome. We know how devastating the viral infection can be to women when they are pregnant compared to a non-pregnant as well. And so you can also have effects on baby. There's also a recent published study also that showed that baby, in fact, does get antibodies from mom after vaccination as well. And so that is a positive thing, especially when those babies are too young to vaccinate. You are at least giving them some protection. So again, vaccine is safe and effective. And when you're pregnant, you obviously want to protect mom and baby alike.
So we talked about the new BF7 strain, but now there are 2 more that are making up 1 in 5 infections, including BA 2.75 and BA 4.6, trying to keep these all straight. What do we know about these new variants? And are they vaccine resistant?
It's still too early to tell. No, I think that what we need to really continue to talk about is the fact that number one, these are subvariants of Omicron. The BA 5.7 was it was from the BA2 lineage. We have another one from BA2. There was a New England Journal of Medicine article that was just published on Wednesday that showed that for that new variant, it is still susceptible to our antiviral therapies. Our Evusheld still works. The monoclonal antibody still works. Dr. McGurk and I were just talking about this. Right now, there really doesn't seem to be a lot that we need to be concerned about as far as resistance to antivirals, resistance to the immune response that our vaccines produce, because again, 80% or more of those conserved areas on the spike, are conserved for our T cell immunity. That is really what protects us against hospitalization and severe disease. We know we have seen variants throughout this pandemic now, and I think we need to continue to look and investigate what each new variant has, not just in spike, but those other viral proteins as well. But right now, we continue to have very effective vaccines and treatment for them.
Dr. Hawkinson, thanks so much. Today we are discussing the need for bone marrow transplant donors among all ethnicities. And one way you can help is to join the Be the Match Registry. It's super easy and takes just minutes to do. This morning we are live at the Guadalupe Centers, where they are planning to reach more ethnic donors. And that's where we find Alexis Del Cid this morning. Hi, how are you?
Good morning, Jessica. I'm here with Mindy Allen. Mindy is the Blood and Marrow Donor Coordinator at the University of Kansas Health System. And we have someone with us who's going to also take part in the demonstration. That is Elad Iguere. Elad is the Director of Small Business Development with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. So we're going to get to Elad's role in this in a moment. But first, Mindy, I want to ask you, you have a very specific and ideal criteria for donors, and one of them is you're requesting only between the ages of 18 and 40. Why would that be?
Yeah, that's correct. We choose donors in that age group because studies have shown that donors that are younger, their stem cells provide better outcomes for our patients in the long term.
So you're going to take us through the process, and Jessica's been saying all morning, this is such a simple process that we can do it live on TV for you right now. So a lad's going to get tested to see if he's a match. So show us how it works.
Yeah, so you can sign up online, or if you attend one of our drives, we will walk you through the process on your smartphone. But basically, all you're going to be doing to get swabbed is you're going to take this little Q-tip sample and you're going to scrub the inside of the side of your cheek up and down and press pretty firmly so you can get some saliva and some tissue on that sample.
While he's doing that,
And I'll take that back from you.
why is a lad the perfect candidate?
So he is the perfect candidate because he's in our ideal age group. He's healthy and he's demonstrated willingness to donate to anyone in need if he gets called up.
And is it also ideal because a lad has Hispanic ancestry?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We are trying to grow diversity on the registry so that there's more representation.
Which would mean more lives saved.
Absolutely.
What happens if he's a match? How do you get the marrow out of him? That's a common question we get is how does it work?
Yeah, so if a lad is matched with a donor, it could be next month, it could be in the next several years. He'll remain on that registry until he's 61.
Okay.
But when he gets called up, the Be the Match will contact him and they will ask him to proceed to the next steps of the evaluation. So that would be, you'd get an informational session with someone on the phone, and then they would ask you to come in for health screening testing. We want to make sure that you're healthy to proceed. And then the actual donation itself is done either through the blood, just like you're donating blood, or platelets, a very similar process. That happens about 75% of the time. The 25% of those cases is a bone marrow procedure under general anesthesia. Both of these processes are well tolerated. The outcome is very good for the patient, and the recovery time is swift. Very little risk to a donor.
And if a lad matches, it wouldn't necessarily be someone here locally, would it?
No, it can be anywhere worldwide.
Wow.
Internationally.
So if it happens to be someone in another country, overseas, do you have to take a lad there, or
Nope.
can you do the process here?
He may need to fly somewhere within several hours distance, but usually it's pretty close to home for your portion of it. A courier is going to take those stem cells once they're collected to the transplant center and give them to the patient.
So there are people watching right now that might not qualify or might not be able to donate. How can they help if they're watching right now?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways. One big thing is if you know anybody in your life that's in that age group that you can recruit to be on the donor registry and encourage them to do so. You can also share our story socially. That's very helpful to raise awareness, and then raising money.
Like put it on social media?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Raising money and getting involved in a legislative level would help.
This is great, and there's going to be a fantastic event here. I want to make sure that we give you the information, so take a look at your screen, and if you're listening to this via podcast, I'm going to read it to you. There's a huge event coming up at Guadalupe Centers. That's where we are right now at 1015 Avenida Cesar Chavez here in Kansas City, Thursday, October 20th, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., and that's where you just show up, and they will swab your cheek, or they'll let you swab it yourself, and you're done. It's that simple. And just in 5 minutes of your time, you could match someone and save their life. It's really a cool event and a huge important push. So like we were saying, and like Mindy was saying, spread the word, donate, do whatever you can do to make sure more people get out here and see if they can be a life-saving match. I'm going to toss it back to you in the studio, Jess.
Alexis, thank you so much. Let's check and see if we have any reporters on the line today. All right, let's get to our community. And I knew this question was going to come up, Dr. McGurk. And I know you're a gentleman. You would never say I am too old. But being over 40, I am too old to donate now, right?
Yes, correct.
But somebody who is in their 40s or 50s stays on that registry until they're 61, as Mindy had mentioned.
That's exactly
so tell us a
right.
little bit about the age requirements.
Yes, that's right. It turns out that as we've accumulated data on hundreds of thousands of patients undergoing transplant, that younger donors result in better outcomes for patients. Better engraftment, lesser risk for this complication I mentioned previously of graft-versus-host disease, better recovery of their immune system. And so our preference is for donors 40 years of age and less. And in particular, again, I just want to reiterate something that Mindy said just now, and that is that there is a great injustice in the access to these life-saving therapies for so many people, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, mixed race couples like my own family.
Yeah, tell us your personal story.
My wife is Chinese and I'm Western European, Caucasian descent. And if my son, God forbid, had leukemia and needed a bone marrow transplant, the statistical chances of us finding a match for him in the worldwide registry is in the single digits in terms of percentage. However, there are alternatives like that which CC undertook, and that is using a partially matched family member, and those transplants and outcomes can be just as good as unrelated donor transplants. So we do have other avenues, cord blood stem cell transplantation, which we've done extensively at University of Kansas. So we have other options. But optimally, we want the best match and a young donor for our patient.
Making this event, Cece, that you're holding so important. What's been the feedback? What are you learning from the just minority groups, Hispanic community in particular, just about any of those barriers? And are they, and now that they see this and see how easy it is, we're hoping that will help break some of that down.
Well, I think it's just bringing greater awareness to, you know, just to how easy and how simple it is, just explaining it in just really layman's terms to the community. And so I think that's what we're working on on a consistent basis, just telling the story in a very simple way, that the outcome could be really great. And
Educate
it's not
them.
Educate, inform.
And then swab.
That's right.
Educate, then swab them. Okay, Sharon wants to know, does insurance help with travel for donors if needed? I mean, we're talking about a global wide reach.
Yes, absolutely. Insurance is standard operating procedure is to fully support the donor, and the donor incurs no financial responsibility or loss for travel, for lodging, for the medical procedure, for the pre-workup. All of that is covered by insurance of the recipient.
Dr. Hawkinson, going to jump one in here for you. Taylor wants to know, how has the fall booster take-up been going? Has a large percentage of the community received that booster? Do we know? Can we tell who's getting boosted, who's not, who still needs it?
You know, I don't know that we have the numbers just yet for our community. We know around the nation, though, there has been news stories about the low uptake, unfortunately. We know also there was also a recent MMWR CDC publication I was looking at this morning that showed that additional booster dose for the fourth one for those people that were high risk did have that added benefit of reducing that risk of hospitalization and severe outcomes even more. And so those people at highest risk, again, right now we're saying 60 to 65 and older, but certainly even the CDC previously has included 50 and above because a third or more of the population of 50 and above have comorbid conditions. So those comorbid conditions such as obesity, diabetes, lung disease, heart disease, things like that are going to put you at higher risk of having those severe outcomes. We know the boosters will help reduce that risk. But as far as uptake, we know that around the nation it hasn't been exactly what we would like it to be. It hasn't been as optimal as it should be.
All right, Dr. Hawkinson. Another one. Taylor was listening earlier when you were talking about pregnant women. I know that is not your specialty, but he was just curious if you were able to check out the JAMA study on mRNA showing up in breast milk after vaccination. Have you read it? If not, you've got some reading to do this weekend.
No, I haven't read it.
Okay.
We'll certainly take a look at that. We'll have to see exactly what that means. And again, we know that antibodies can be transferred through breast milk as well. So again, what is the clinical significance of that? I think we need to figure that out, but we'll certainly take a look at that publication and see what we can see.
Okay. Yan Liang wants to know, do patients with multiple myeloma need bone marrow transplantation? And would that treatment help them live a longer life?
Absolutely. So stem cell transplant, but using the patient's own stem cells represents a standard of care for patients with multiple myeloma. Initially treated with a standard chemotherapy, we collect stem cells, and then we do a stem cell transplant. And multiple prospective randomized trials over the last 30 years have shown that significantly improves time in remission and improves overall survival. So patients live longer. But we've even taken it a step further now CAR T-cell therapy is moving up in our armamentarium, where we take the patient's cells out of their blood, genetically re-engineer them to attack the cancer. And we're seeing in patients who have had a stem cell transplant and relapsed, and patients who have failed all of the standard therapies, a 98% complete overall response rate and 80% complete remissions, really stunning results. So this is an extraordinarily promising time for patients with multiple myeloma.
I want you to give us an evolution lesson, if you would, because we think of stem cell transplants as kind of the gold standard for blood cancer treatment, but with this increase of immunotherapy, do you ever see a time when stem cell transplants would not be needed, or are they all interrelated? Tell us how that all works.
They are indeed all interrelated. So the stem cell transplants were developed back in the 1970s and 1980s. And we thought that the curative nature of stem cell transplant was based on the high-dose radiation and chemotherapy patients received to destroy their cancer, but destroyed their bone marrow, and so we had to replace that with a donor's bone marrow. However, what we really learned was that's not what was curing many of our patients. What was curing them were the cells called T cells in the bone marrow stem cell transplant from the donor. The donor's T cells were killing the cancer. Once that was discovered, we started separating out those T cells and using them as a standalone therapy, and then genetically engineering them to do an optimal job in our patients. And so now that stem cell transplant, certain types of stem cell transplant using someone else as a donor, like Cece had, is evolving into this CAR T-cell therapy and other such therapies. So it's an evolutionary process. So we're kind of blending. Stem cell transplant still represents a standard of care for many of our patients. But we will have a future where we get away from the high-dose radiation and chemotherapy. We move into a new world where we're using immunotherapy alone and not having to submit patients to those aggressive toxic therapies.
That will make you very happy, right?
You betcha.
Okay, a couple more questions before we go. Lindsay wants to know, how many times can you be a donor on the registry? Once you're in, you could maybe donate to several people?
You can. There are limitations about how soon you can donate after a first donation. But donors can donate more than one time. In addition, sometimes we go back to those donors. This is a great segue from our last question, and we ask if the patient's starting to relapse, or we're seeing that the bone marrow is not working as well as we need it to work, we'll go back to the donor. For example, Cece's son, God forbid we should have to go there, or an unrelated donor who's in the south of France, we'll go back to them and say, we need some T cells from you. Can we have T cells? We got to put this patient back into remission.
Like their job isn't done just yet, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
we need them to come to bat once again. Last question, and you touched on this earlier, Dr. McGurk. Is the recipient's blood type changed? You mentioned if somebody were to take Cece's blood, it would show that she's a man.
That's correct. The genetics would change in all of her blood cells. Her entire immune system will have XY chromosome, a male's chromosomes, not the rest of her tissues, of course, but just the blood system and the immune system. Now, with regard to blood type, which is separate from the immune system, it's interrelated, but it's separate. The blood type will change. So if Cece is an A before the transplant and her son's an O, she'll become an O. And so her transfusions would change to an O blood type. So quite interesting.
Interesting and quite fascinating
yes,
to hear you explain it. I want to get to our final thoughts today, and Cece, I want to start with you. Just share with us, first of all, just your message about making sure that people get educated on swabbing and get on that registry, and just kind of leave us with your parting words.
Well, thank you very much for having me, first of all. But yes, I think the headline is, just educate yourself. If you're in that sweet spot of a donor of that age group, please just consider becoming part of the registry. You could literally be a hero to someone or a shero to someone and save their lives.
Get in and out quickly, so let's do it. We'll put more information up and continue to share the info about your event. Dr. McGurk, always great to see you on a Friday. Just final thoughts, what should we know?
Thank you for having me as well. My final thought is this is an extraordinarily promising time for patients with blood cancers across the board. We're really in the midst of a revolution in cancer therapeutics with more effective, less toxic therapies. We're going to see a world in the years to come where we move away from non-specific, very toxic radiation and chemotherapy to a new world of molecules that specifically target the cancers, cellular therapies that specifically target the cancers and cause much less collateral damage to our patients. So it's a great time and a much greater chance that we'll be curing our patients increasingly in the years to come.
Thanks for all you do for our patients. We appreciate you always. And Cece, we're going to put some information up. I wanted to put a full screen so that if people wanted to walk into that Be the Match drive-in, anyone can walk in, right?
Absolutely.
Anyone. All
Anyone.
ethnicities welcome, as
Right.
always, at the Guadalupe Centers. So please check that out. You'll be in and out in how many minutes?
Yeah, just a few.
Just a few.
Right.
Okay. Sounds great. Dr. Hawkinson, final thoughts on this Friday?
Yeah, I don't regularly search the pediatrics journals, and that's what this article was in, and that was just referenced about the mRNA in breast milk. Just a Cliff's Notes on it real quick. The authors do state that it was sporadic and short-lived identification of the mRNA in the breast milk, and out of 11 people they surveyed who had just gotten their vaccine, they found it in 5 people, but it was in picograms concentration. What does that mean? The vaccine is given in nanograms. They detected it in very trace quantities, in their words. In picograms, that's 1,000 times less than what you get in the vaccine. Ultimately, they didn't find anything more than 48 hours after that vaccination occurred, and so they continue to endorse the fact that giving these vaccines during pregnancy is safe. And again, what we heard before, you do have some transfer of maternal antibodies as well, which can help protect baby in that time period after they're born where they can't get vaccinated. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, it does. Thanks for looking into it for us. All right, Dr. Hawkinson, thank you. And we want to tell you about an event that's shining a light on blood cancers. Tomorrow is the annual Light the Night Walk to benefit the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. The event gives the Kansas City metro area a chance to celebrate, honor, and remember those touched by blood cancers. Hundreds of people will take part in the walk, get a chance to eat some great food, and it all ends with fireworks. It starts at 5:30 p.m. tomorrow at Cleveland University in Overland Park. All the money raised will pay for research, advocacy, and support the blood cancer patients and their families. Well, it is Foodie Friday. Chef Eric has a super easy and healthy game snack, or you can just throw it in the kids' lunchbox. Either way, have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here Monday at 8.
Today we are making our nutty apple wrap. While nuts like almonds and peanuts are high in unsaturated fats are great for your skin, health, brain, and other functions. So today this is a really simple recipe. You start with a nice organic apple. Now you can core them, slice them, and peel them yourselves, or you can also cook them in or chop them up in a microprocessor. Very simple today. We're going to be taking our peanut butter, a little bit of organic honey. That's the good stuff right there. Just a little bit of cinnamon to spice it up. We're going to pull this in real well here. Today we're going to be using a whole wheat tortilla to wrap this up with. You can also use English muffins, toast, or any other kind of bread you like in the morning to start off. Great little snack to get you started every day. Or if you're just in a quick hurry, something you can throw together real fast. Take with you to work, to play, or wherever you'd like to go. We add in a little apples right here. We're going to fold that over and roll that up just like a burrito. Now you can also take this, throw it on a flat top or in a skillet, heat it up for just a little bit, put a nice little toast on it. Now if you happen to be allergic to peanut butter, you could use low-fat cream cheese, vanilla yogurt, honey, and a little bit of vanilla extract for that flavor. Now you can pair this with a large side salad or maybe some fruit on the side. Take it from a snack into a meal. And here we have our nutty apple wrap. Nice, easy, fast, and delicious. Thank you.
Coming up Monday on the Morning Medical Update, a popular Kansas City personality shares her breast cancer journey.
There's always a chance that cancer of any kind may return.
For Cynthia Newsom, that's exactly what happened. I'm Jessica Lovell. Join us as we kick off Pink Week. Find out, after years of treatment and a new trial, how it's helping Cynthia live with cancer and her message to other women and those who support them.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcast. Now, everywhere podcasts are available.